Hello and welcome to Writing Workshop 101. My name is Heidi Luella and I am the K-8 Instructional and Literacy Coach for Bensalem School District. This video will focus on the conferring part of the independent work time in the Writing Workshop. But before we dive in, let's look back at what makes Writing Workshop successful. Think of Writing Workshop as a three-legged stool. Each leg, structure, intentional instruction, and accountability, is a necessary component. If one leg is not sturdy, then the entire stool will fall over, and the same goes for the workshop. The purpose of today's video is to focus on the structure leg of the three-legged stool, more specifically, the structure of conferring during the independent work time. Remember, the time we spend in both reading and writing workshop is like a pie cut into slices. The mini lesson, that smaller piece, is meant to be from 7 to 12 minutes and has a pretty tight structure to keep it concise. Without focusing on the structure for the mini lesson, teachers may find themselves using a much longer period of time, which then takes away from the valuable work necessary in the independent time. The independent work time is the remainder of the workshop pie and where all of the practice and differentiation happens. Conferring is one tool used to deliver the differentiation. The independent work is broken down into 5 parts. Conferring makes up only one of the moving parts of this chunk of time. During the reading and writing workshops, there are multiple instructional tools being used. The mini lesson, that 7 to 12 minutes in the beginning of the workshop, and conferring and small group instruction, which are 2 of the moving parts used during the independent work time. These tools are not equal. The mini lesson is actually the weakest tool of the 3 tools, which is why we don't want to spend too much time there. It steals time from the independent time where the stronger tools are being used. Small group instruction is a much stronger tool than the mini lesson, but conferring is actually your strongest tool in the toolbox. Judith E. Glasser, the author of Conversational Intelligence, How Great Leaders Build Trust and Get Extraordinary Results, reminds us that positive comments and positive conversations provide a chemical high, and yet negative ones stick with us much longer. One of the reasons conferring has such a positive impact is because it allows for and creates space for positive comments and positive conversations to occur. In a world where our kids need their social and emotional needs met more than ever, conferring is the perfect place to accomplish this important work while growing readers and writers. Conferences are about building respectful relationships. This is where you will learn so much about each of your students on a personal level. In order to build respectful relationships, we want to make sure that conferring incorporates many positive features. The first is that conferring is a conversation, and something that Carl Anderson, author of A Teacher's Guide to Conferences, greatly emphasizes. It's not a checklist of, do you have A, B, and C? Or editing their writing and pointing out everything they need to work on. It's a conversation that focuses on the writer and his or her writing. It's a time to ask writers what they're focusing on and notice strengths in the writing. It's about asking what goals they have for their writing. Even if you've generated a list of possible goals, it's about the writer's goals. There is a choice and ownership, and every writer may have different goals. Once you see what they're working on and what they're doing well, you want to use their goals to coach them into what's next. This is a time to possibly use mentor text to see how another writer or other writers did this kind of work and coach them into writing in the air to develop their new focus before sending them off. They model respect of the writer and the writing, and because they are catered to the individual and provide the right kind of support, they build trusting relationships. We're going to look at one of Carl Anderson's conferences from the Heinemann blog, What Makes a Good Writing Conference. Look at the different features of the writing conference that build respectful relationships in his conference.
So how's your writing going, Matthew?
It's good.
What you doing?
I'm writing about writing about opinions that we would like to change in the world.
Things you want to change, situations you want to change.
Yeah.
And what do you want to change?
About having homework.
What about homework?
It's like we already learn.
What's your opinion about it?
Well, we shouldn't have it because we already learn everything in school.
You might be the only kid I've ever met that doesn't think we should have homework. Most kids love homework so much. And I'm kidding. Your opinion's shared far and wide. So how do you feel the writing went? Like, what did you do as a writer to try to really express your opinion and to try to help people understand where you're coming from?
I thought like of how like it would affect your lives and stuff. And I worked with one of my friends. We looked up like reasons on the Chromebook
So
of how to do it.
So you've been trying to think of reasons why homework, there shouldn't be homework.
Yeah.
Okay. And I see that you said your first reason is you spend half your day in school learning about something.
Yeah.
And then you have to do it again. Okay. And that kids can't sit around all day.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are some of your reasons. And what else have you done to try to come up with, to try to get your opinion across in a really clear way?
It's like I'd just like sit there. I'd like think of reason. I would list reasons, and then like in my mind, and then I would like write the best ones that I would think of like really good.
That does seem exactly what you've done. I love how you started. You ever have an exhausting day at school, and then you have to do your homework. That's how I feel every day. That's why I want to ban homework. And you're not shy about what you're saying either. I want to ban homework. That's bold. Okay, we need people like you with bold opinions that can change things. Okay, and then it seems like a lot of what you have here is like, this is a reason. My first reason is that you can spend half your day learning about something, then you have to do it again. I mean, you already know it. Okay, and it feels like what that part is your reason. Okay, I think one way that you could be an even stronger opinion writer is to extend your opinions with some examples. Okay, of what you mean.
Like I didn't put an example there, so
where is
I
it?
had like right there.
Okay, you read, for example, when I go home, the problems are so easy, it feels like just writing numbers on a page without purpose. That's a mini story that really, you did elaborate exactly on, I mean, you already know it. But I think that your main point there is that you spend half your day in school learning about something. Okay, that to me that's your reason right there. And if you could develop that with examples. Okay, because one way we develop reasons is with examples. It's going to help people understand that more. Okay, so I'm going to show you something. I'm sure you're not going to agree with this. Okay, I'm sure, but this writer has a reason that she uses examples to get her point across. Okay, you're not going to like this. Summer homework should be banned, right? You want summer homework, don't you?
No.
I'm kidding. But this is an adult who wrote this. And she has a lot of reasons. Just like you have reasons for no homework really during the school year, she's got reasons for no summer homework. And look at this one here. It says summer homework can also take away from the important learning that goes on outside of school. She didn't stop there, okay? And then Nancy Kale is the author of this piece. She includes 2 examples of what goes on outside of school. She wrote, this includes reading for pleasure, which helps you establish a lifelong love of books. Play is also essential. It gives you an opportunity to master social skills such as teamwork that will be a key to your success as a working adult. So she took the reason and gave us a couple examples to help us understand what she means. I mean, what is important learning that goes on outside of school? Okay, she gave us, I think, 2 very good examples, which helps me ultimately think that she's on the right track with her opinion that summer homework may not be the best idea. Okay, so I think when you have a reason, like you spend half your day in school learning about something, I think you could also use examples to help us understand what that means. And you can say to yourself, well, what do I mean by that exactly? You could say, for example, and see what pops out of your head. Okay, so let's try that. Read the reason again, my first reason.
My first reason is that you spend half of your day in school learning about something.
Stop there. For example.
For example,
You're here for 6 hours. What are you learning about? For example.
We learn about math, and then
Say more about that math you're learning.
we learn about like geometry, and then we go home and
Okay, so we learn about geometry, and also
the worksheets that we bring home are.
don't talk about school.
Example.
One example of all this learning that you do something in school is the math and the geometry, right?
Yeah.
What's another example of something you do in school?
We learn about social studies and about like the past.
Okay.
and history.
Sound pretty busy. You have a busy day. You're learning lots of stuff. Math and geometry and social studies and history.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, my head is starting to hurt already. Okay, just thinking about it. And then you have to do it again at home. Now that makes more sense to me now. And then when you talk about the problems that are home, I think it gives more weight to that because you gave some examples of what happened in school. So, when you have reasons, okay, giving examples is a way of really helping people really see in their heads what you're talking about. Okay, and I think it's just, reasons are great, and you have some really good ones, I think, that really do make a good argument, but those examples, to me, are what really help people understand the reasons. Okay, and just be aware that giving those examples is important. Okay, so I'm going to have you could try that right over here. Okay, just try writing those two examples about math and social studies. Okay, and you can use those exact words. Okay, you could use her words like this includes, or you could say for example. Okay, as a way of introducing your examples. Okay, so we're going to have you try that right now and come back and see how it goes later. Okay.
Okay, and here's one more writing conference that's featuring a first grader. Look at the different features of this writing conference and how it builds a respectful relationship.
Okay, talk to me. What are you working on today? What are some things that you're thinking about as a writer? You're writing about polar bears? Yeah? Let's see. Polar bears are a bear that live in the cold. Dinner time. I love that heading. Polar bears eat meat. They like fish. They find fish at a cold lake. A panda is a bear. A grizzly bear is a bear. A polar bear is a bear. And so what else do you feel like you need to do in this book? I saw you working on it. What are you thinking of doing in this part? So you're going to go back and add more now. Is that right? Yeah. So, Hazel, can I talk to you just about some things that I'm noticing about you as a writer? Okay. So the cool thing that you did is you're kind of trying out headings for each part. And I don't even know if that's something that your teacher taught you, but that's something that you noticed and you probably are in the books that you're reading. And so for this, you wrote, what is a polar bear? And then for this section, you wrote, dinner time. Because it's about what polar bears eat, right? That's exactly what authors do in books, and you notice that, and so you're trying it out in your book. Some of the headings are a question, what is a polar bear? And some of the headings are like a funny thing, like a little joke, right? Dinner time. I love it. So can I teach you something? Okay. So when you're writing a book, one of the things that you have to do is you have to check and make sure that every page fits with what the book is about. Can I show you what I mean? Okay. So this book is called Planes. So if I was a writer, I would have to check, does every page that I wrote fit with planes? If it fits, I can keep it. If it doesn't fit, I either have to take it out or I have to change the title of the book so that it fits. Watch. This is about planes, so we can check. In the sky, airplanes are flying. Does that fit with planes? Okay. This is a jet plane with people inside. Does that fit with planes? Yes. Here is a seaplane. Does that fit with planes? Is that a plane? Yeah. So let's try that with your book. Let's check each page. Does it fit with my big title? And if it doesn't, we have to decide, do we want to take it out or do we want to change the title? So your big title of this book is? What is? So it's all about polar bears. Are you ready? So this page, polar bears are bears that live in the cold. Does that fit with polar bears? Yes. Okay. So we can keep it. Now you read that page.
Polar bears eat meat. They like fish. They find fish at a cold lake.
Does that fit with polar bears?
Yes.
Okay. Read that.
A panda is a bear.
that fit? Is a panda bear a polar bear? Wow. Read that one. Check it.
A grizzly bear is a bear.
Does that fit? Is a grizzly bear a polar bear?
It's kind of similar because they're bears.
You're right. So you have to decide now. Do you want to take this page out because it doesn't fit with polar bears? Or you have another choice, which is you could change your title of your book. Rather than just saying polar bears, you could make it bears. Do you want to write a book all about different kinds of bears, or do you want to write a book just about polar bears? You have to decide.
Polar bears.
Okay, so if you want the book to be about polar bears, what do you have to do to this page then? Yeah, it doesn't fit, does it? You have to take it out. Let's check the last page and see if it fits. You ready?
A polar bear is a bear.
Does that fit with polar bears?
Yes.
Yes, so you can keep it. So this page, Hazel, this doesn't fit with your book, does it? So you can just take it out and add more pages just about polar bears. So here's what I want to remind you. Whenever you're writing a book, you have to check each page and ask, does it fit with my topic? If it does, keep it. If it doesn't, you either take it out or you change the title of your book. And for this, you decided you're going to take that page out because it doesn't fit with polar bears. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, go to it.
Okay, so if we go back to our chart of what makes a conference. So I love how both of those conferences, they focus on the writer that's in front of them. They both complement the writer and the writing on the writer's strengths. And they also coach into a specific strategy that's based on a goal for what they need next to grow as a writer. And I liked how both conferences focused on the students as writers, but also used what other writers do to model the work that they need to do next. If you want to learn more about writing conferences, there are a lot of professional books, including the one written by Carl Anderson. Each classroom should already have the Writing Strategies book to help find and determine strategies individuals and small groups may need to help them grow as writers from where they are. Jennifer Saravallo also has many free resources on YouTube, as well as through the Reading and Writing Strategies community on Facebook. And there are many more writing conference videos with Carl Anderson on the Heinemann blog under What Makes a Good Writing Conference. Have a great day.